You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Welcome, everyone. You're listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I am your host, Doug Thorpe, and today I've got a gentleman named Daniel Blue with us. Daniel is an entrepreneur. He's got his own personal journey story that he'll share with us, but we're going to get into some of the meat and potatoes, so to say, of what he's actually doing for folks now. But first, let me say, Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hey, Doug. Thank you for having me. Excited to be jamming with you this evening.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. You know, folks, we try to talk about ideas about business to try to keep it simple. We don't want to make it complicated. We don't want to make it hard. And that's exactly what the title of the show's about. We want to look for easier, more simplified, common sense answers and ideas to things. And, you know, a lot of times, those of us that have become entrepreneurs, we've got our own backstory of what motivated us to get into business and do it on our own. So, Daniel, you want to share a little bit of your backstory for folks to get us started?
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of your audience is probably familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk. And I don't have this really cool Gary Vee story where, like Gary Vee, he was a hustler and a business owner in the second grade, right? That just wasn't me. Being an entrepreneur wasn't something I dreamed of, wasn't something I thought of until I got older. And a lot of it, where I'm at today in terms of being a business owner, really just came out of necessity. There was things I didn't want to have. I didn't want to have a life living paycheck to paycheck. I didn't want to have a life of struggle. And I got to experience some of that as a child. My parents got divorced when I was 12, and all of a sudden my dad was in Mexico, and I never talked to him really until much later in my life. So he was completely gone from my life. And now it's just my mom and I. And my mom struggled to do what she needed to do. She's my hero, and she kicked butt and she made it happen. But there was some ups and downs. There was times where we really struggled financially. And I remember thinking, Doug, and I don't want to live like this when I'm older. I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. And I definitely want to make things easier for my mom. Like I got to pay her back when I get older. I don't know how, but I got to find a way to make it happen. And I stumbled into sales. I went to college at 18 because that's what society told me to do, but I had no mission. I didn't know what I was going to school for. I just enrolled and showed up and ended up dropping out of college after a whopping 3 months and found sales. Sales was something that I was able to succeed at. I never thought I was going to be in sales, but here I was in the real estate sales space. And because I got into that environment, I was exposed to basically what I do today, what my firm does today, which is helping people access their 401k IRAs penalty and tax free. And this concept was introduced to me back in 08, 09, where I was hearing people mention, I just use my IRA to invest in real estate. Just use my 401k to flip this house. And that concept was so foreign to me because, Doug, I always thought retirement accounts were for stocks or for mutual funds. I had no idea that you could use a retirement account in a lot of different ways, like real estate. You know, now we're looking at crypto and precious metals and private equity, and this whole new world was unveiled to me. And I knew at that time I wanted to dive into this world. I just didn't know how and when that would happen. And I was able to get into this space about 10 years ago. And it's a space that I really love. It's a space that not a lot of people are aware of. And we have a lot of fun teaching people how to access their 401k IRAs, penalty and tax free.
That's great. I know I've got a good friend. He and his wife are in the real estate investment business. They've got a number of rental properties that they manage and flip. And he actually brought this idea to me a couple of years ago. He had learned that he could tap into that 401 money and do a self-directed IRA program with his real estate. And that's how they've been able to leverage and, roll those properties and actually get debt free on the properties. Their whole portfolio, they don't have a single note outstanding on any of them. And so, money they take in is literally free cash. They obviously, as any real estate investor knows you've got some expenses to go with it, but for the most part, they're living really large and enjoying it. How big is your firm these days?
I've got 13 employees that we are based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. We've got customers in all 50 states. We're at about 1,100 customers. A lot of our clients do have self-directed IRAs, but the majority of our customers have solo 401ks. And basically, those are self-directed plans. And we might be able to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit later, but basically a solo 401k is for an entrepreneur that gives a lot more bells and whistles than a self-directed IRA. We tend to serve mostly entrepreneurs, solopreneurs.
Yeah, neat. That's very good. Well, before we do get into those nuts and bolts, I'd like to just kind of hear your experiences on making this transition, getting out of the, and maybe I'm inferring too much, but when you describe starting in the sales game, I guess for a time you were working for somebody else, right? In sales?
Yeah, I started my firm 4 years ago. So going from salesman, employee to employer, it definitely has been some growing pains and some experiences.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to focus on, is that sort of transition story, how you went through the process of making the decision and leading up to that day when you told the old employer I quit, and now you're ready to launch the business. Walk us through some of those thoughts and steps that you went through.
Yeah, so I think to do that more accurately, we've got to take it back a little bit farther, where I made a lot of knucklehead choices in my early years, 18, 19, 20 years old, where I was telling you earlier that when I was growing up, my mom raised me on her own and we didn't have a ton of money. So when I was 18 years old, made over $90,000 my first year. And I'm thinking, I'm rich. I can take care of my mom. This is amazing. I've never seen that kind of money before. And the next year I made 6 figures and I thought I was the king of the hill. And I ended up buying a property in 08, the peak of the market. And we know how this story is going to end, right? I ended up losing my house. But a lot of that had to do with I was living beyond my means. I didn't have a budget. I didn't have an investing plan. I didn't believe in credit. I always thought I have cash. Why do I need a credit score? I wasn't properly educated on credit, business credit, credit score, utilization rates. I didn't have an entity set up. I didn't have an LLC. So I didn't understand tax strategies. I didn't work with the CPA. I was just a knucklehead. And I did that for a number of years, probably a good 2-3 years, just having my head in the sand. And after, I would just say, hitting rock bottom, I was able to take a step back and look at my experience and learn from that. So in my mid-20s, I'm making decent money, but this time it's different. I'm spending way less than what I'm making. I'm investing my money. I'm building my credit score. I'm utilizing, resources like CPAs and entities and getting very strategic with my tax situation. And I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm working for a company, and I didn't think about starting my own business until I got to a point where I was more established. I had money in the bank. I had a good credit score. I'd been working for a company for a while now. I feel like my leadership skills were honed in. I had a team. I was always used to running a team in sales. So I got to a point in my mid-20s where I'm thinking, man, I think I can do this on my own. Like, I want to be the captain of my own ship. And I do think a lot of that stemmed from sports. I played sports when I was a kid, soccer, basketball, and that was my escape, Doug. When I was being a victim and blaming my dad and just kind of going through that phase in my teenage years, sports was that outlet for me. And sports taught me leadership, how to win, how to lose. And I was never the best player on the sports team. I was never the most skilled, but I tended to be the captain most of the time. And I feel like that played a part in me being a business owner, where that's all about leading a team and building a culture and working with others and getting the most out of people. So I do think there was some of that was honed in from my youth. And then I looked at my finances and I thought, well, I've got some money in the bank. I've got some stock that I can sell. I've got a bunch of 0% credit cards that I could use to fund this business. And network is really, really strong. My network has been amazing to me. I wouldn't be here without certain people in my life. And again, I don't have a college degree. I went to school for 3 months and I dropped out. I don't come from money. My family wasn't entrepreneurial minded. So it's not like I had an uncle that, showed me how to run a business. I just
Yeah.
failed a bunch of different times, but I just looked at the puzzle I had and I was like, what the heck? Let me just go all in. Worst case scenario, I don't make it and I just go work for someone else. And here we are 4 years later. We're still in the game. The scoreboard is still the scoreboard. The clock hasn't expired and, we're still plugging away.
Yeah, that's great. I want to unpack some of what you said there. You covered a lot of turf in that description there, and let me start with the sports involvement. I run into people that, unless they've had that experience and what that really means in a well-run program, they don't get the opportunity that young people can learn from that experience. And you don't necessarily have to become the team captain to learn these things, but as team captain, you definitely take on responsibilities that, a lot of people never get a chance to try. So what were some of the things you saw needed to be done within your role as team captain? And how much was the coach kind of influencing what you were thinking about doing or choosing to do?
Dealing with failure, right? We all have to deal with it, dealing with losing. And that's one thing sports teaches you is you're going to lose a lot. And sometimes you're going to get your butt kicked. Sometimes it's going to be embarrassing. Sometimes you're not going to want to play again. Like you want to quit. Like, Mom, I quit. I don't want to come back. And then your mom's like, I just paid your league dues. You're not quitting. Get your ass back on the court, right? So,
Yeah.
that's real life. You take an L in business. Sometimes you're just like, man, I don't even want to show up the next day. I don't even want to go home to my wife and tell her what happened. But you just keep on it. And I just kind of made that sentence on the fly. But until the shot clock, until the game clock expires, you still have a shot to win it. And there's going to be some times where it's ugly and things aren't looking like you're going to win. But in business, you just got to keep pushing. And you never know when you're going to have that break, right? It's like basketball. How many times do we see a basketball team go on a 20-0 run, 15-0 run? Like real quick, the game just turns. And you got to be ready to catch that momentum and move forward because business isn't always rainbows and sunshines. You have to learn how to take an L, have that failure. What's the lesson? What can we learn from it? How can we make sure it doesn't happen again? And you just got to keep moving on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. And that is the great part of the opportunity, realizing that taking that loss is not fatal. The as the song says, the sun will come up tomorrow. You'll get another shot. You'll get another chance. You just have to learn from whatever that experience was and try to turn that into a more positive experience than just the whatever emotional weight goes with the idea that you lost the game or team lost the game. As you started sort of formulating your idea for what the business was going to look like, I mean, I get the idea. You talked about, you built some personal wealth, cash in the bank, good credit score, et cetera. When did you finally start getting the idea and the vision and shape that the business was going to take? How did that unfold?
I was blessed to work for a company that is very similar to what we do. It's in the self-directed space. So I was able to work for that company and learn a lot of what I learned today through people and through processes and just rolling up my sleeves and doing the work. So I knew there was a proof of concept. I knew there was a market out there that needed what our service provided, the service of accessing your retirement account penalty and tax-free. So I knew there was already that proof of concept. It's just a matter of putting my own flavor in it. So that's your question. Once I was able to experience a sustainable amount of success as an employee, where I played a big role in this company from a leadership standpoint, from a management standpoint, production standpoint, then I looked at the pieces of the puzzle that I brought to the table. I'm thinking, well, I think I can put this together and make a run.
And I take that to mean you're talking about your sales background, right? Your
Yeah.
expertise with sales.
Yeah, that's my jam is the sales side, operations, processes, systems. That's not a forte of mine. Luckily, I've got people that work with me who are a lot smarter than
Well, and not to make light of it, someone that is actually good in the sales game is a very special commodity because not all of us have that ability. Where do you think your knack for that came from?
that. And that's a really good question. I don't really like the spotlight. I'm not the life of the party. I'm not someone that just loves talking to people. I mean, there's literally people that are like, I just love talking to people. Not that I'm anti-human, and I'm like, I like a dog more than a human being. And I love dogs. I've got 3 dogs. So I don't want people to think that I am anti-human, right? Because there's literally people out there that are like, I hate human beings. Like, I don't even want to talk to a human being. Like, I just want to talk to my dog and my cat. That's not me, but I'm also not this huge extrovert. And I just love talking to people and I love networking and I love, that's also not me. I'm not Grant Cardone. I think I just found clarity in what I want in life. And that started, it's morphed obviously, but when I'm 18 years old, I'm just thinking, man, I want to make as much money as I can because I don't want to experience the financial situation that I just had 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I want to be able to provide for me and my family. And at that time, my family was just me and my mom. So it was more of very clear and ambitious on a target and doing something that would put me in a position to not have to experience something else. It's almost like kind of survival is really how I would express it. And sales was that avenue where I realized I can make this happen and I'm going to figure out how to make it happen. And I go back to sports. Again, sports is you're just grinding, right? Like you're just putting in the reps, you're just working. And that's sales. Sales, you have to outwork your coworkers. You have to shine. You have to have you got to put yourself in a position where your coworkers and your bosses respect you and appreciate you. And they're like, man, we can count on you. You crush it. Same thing with sports. You got to put yourself in a position where your coach has to put you in the game because you bring skill sets to the table. And I tried to embody that in sales as well.
I mean, I like your statement about the hard work and the extra effort, and that made me think about a gentleman I know here locally where I am. He's kind of a sales guru in his own right, and he hires out to help businesses with their sales teams if the owner thinks they're struggling. And he was telling me a story once of a small independent car dealership. Owner called him and said, man, my guys are terrible at sales. Can you just come in and check around and see what's going on and kind of give me some ideas how I can help these guys? And he got there, and what he realized right away on the showroom floor, there was a giant big screen TV, and all day long something was on the TV, and the sales guys were standing there watching TV. And they weren't making phone calls. They would talk with customers that walked on the lot, but they weren't doing anything in between. If there was nobody walking the lot, they were just watching TV. They weren't calling or following up on leads, or if they had a name in their book, they weren't double checking. They weren't doing any of that. So first thing my friend did, he went to the owner and he took a pair of scissors and cut the cord on the TV. And he said, we're not going to have the TV on here anymore. And everybody went, what? And then he elaborated and said, well, here's what you need to be doing. And so, the guys turned their attention to doing the basic stuff. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, like sales on the lot tripled and guys were getting their bigger paychecks, and all of a sudden they were motivated again. And so it's that extra focus on that work to make those kind of things happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's about showing up, right? If you aren't showing up, you're not going to give yourself a chance at all.
Yeah. That very interesting. And showing up, I go back to the sports analogy, the way we show up, you practice like you want to play. And if you're not practicing, you're not going to play any better than you already are. And so it is everything in the way you show up. Daniel, I'll tell you what, it's already time to take a short break here. We're going to take a pause for a brief commercial, and then we'll be right back.
Business is all about solving complex problems as fast as you can create them. Become the best problem solver by leading others to greatness too. And the first step is going to DougThorpe.com. Doug Thorpe is known globally for coaching entrepreneurs and business leaders, improving their performance and the work output of everyone surrounding them. You can find health, wealth, and happiness by learning to lead others to health, wealth, and happiness. Go to DougThorpe.com now and order Doug's books or hire him to coach your managers. That's DougThorpe.com.
Well, all right, everyone. Hello again. We're back, and you're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Today, I'm talking to Daniel Blue. He is a self-made entrepreneur. He's in a very interesting space, dealing with self-directed 401k programs for entrepreneurs, business owners. And Daniel, I'm going to let you describe the essence of the program first. If you'll just kind of give the overview of what the program's all about, and then we can get into some other details.
Yeah, so Doug, basically the problem that we solve in the marketplace is helping people access their 401ks, their IRAs, penalty and tax-free. And by freeing up this money, people could use the money in a lot of different ways. So people think that retirement accounts are just for stocks, just for mutual funds, and then they think that this retirement account is out of sight, out of mind. They can't touch it until they're old and retired. And that's a myth. There is an IRS approved way, there's actually several ways, to get your hands on this money, penalty and tax-free now. And I'll give you guys a recent example. So we had somebody that wanted to start a school. Her whole dream was to start a school. That's what she really wanted to do in her life, but she got busy with kids and marriage and her day job and just life. But then COVID happened. And we know COVID and schools and the education system, just wild, right? If you have a kid, you just know COVID, school, wild. And that's all I have to say, right? So this customer of ours saw the opportunity where the school system was rattled. And thought, man, that's a perfect time for me to start my school. This is the heat of COVID, lockdowns and whatnot. But she needed some capital to launch the school. Well, she had a 401k from an old job. We helped her convert that into what's called a solo 401k. Once the money was in her solo 401k, she was able to take that money out penalty and tax-free. She was able to fund her school, start her business. And then over a period of time, she actually paid back her retirement account, her solo 401k. So that way she replenished that account and didn't have to rob from her future. And all of this happened without paying any penalties and taxes. And the best part, her school crushed it during COVID. And then her school now is actually in person. Like, she has kids that she sees in person. So using a strategy like this to help someone fulfill their dream, start their dream business, obviously fills the soul. That's the kind of impact that we shoot for. So those are some of the things that we love to do in terms of just unpacking where people are, what are their goals, what's point A, what's point B, and how can we get them there?
That's great. And I'm sure there are probably dozens of other stories like that where people are looking to leverage more, especially if they work for any length of time and have built the balance up in that account, rather than, letting it or needing it to just sit there for the maybe 5, 10, 15 years before retirement age. There's opportunities there, right? Are there limits on the kind of activity people can get into with those funds?
Yeah. So one, if you've got a 401k from an old job or an IRA, you can move that money into what's called the self-directed account. And a self-directed IRA is one type of account. And then there's a self-directed solo 401k, which is a different type of account. If you've got money in a 401k and it's with a current employer, unless you're over the age of 59 and a half, you probably have to leave that money where it is until you no longer work for that company. So keep that in mind. But going back to your question, Doug, there is what's called the prohibited transaction. And basically, in layman's terms, the IRS has bullet points of certain things that you can't do when it comes to your self-directed IRA or self-directed solo 401k owning an asset. So, for example, your self-directed retirement account can't own a property and then you live in it. Your self-directed retirement account can't own a property and then you rent it out to your son, right? So there's certain prohibited transactions. The cool part about a solo 401k, Doug, is it has a loan feature. And the loan feature per the IRS allows you to take 50% of the account value or $50,000, whichever number is less. You can take that money out penalty and tax free. And as long as you pay it back within 5 years, there's no penalties and taxes on this money. And there's zero restrictions on what you could use the money for. You can use the money to flip a property, remodel your existing house that you live in, pay off high interest rate credit card debt, fund your dream business. You know, the story I just told with the lady that started her school, she used the loan feature on the solo 401k to make that happen. There's no loan feature on an IRA, but there is a solo 401k. And with the loan feature, because you're taking the cash out of the account, penalty and tax free, and what you do with that cash is done outside of the retirement account, you don't have to play by the prohibited transaction rules that the IRS gives you. So it gives you a lot more freedom.
Well, that sounds like a great opportunity that probably a lot of people, quite honestly, don't know about. When you're out making first contact with people, how many people have actually ever heard about this?
Most people haven't. This is something that a lot of the American public has not been exposed to. And it's very simple why. One, Wall Street typically just teaches their brokers and financial advisors about Wall Street products. Like, they don't teach them anything else. And there's a reason why. Because think about it like this. If you take out $50,000 from your retirement account, penalty and tax free, and you use it to start your business, does your financial advisor, does Wall Street, does Fidelity make money off of that? No.
Nope.
Right? They want you to keep your money in that account. That's how they generate revenue. So why would they teach you how to access your retirement account penalty and tax free? So this isn't anything new that I'm talking about in terms of self-directed IRAs or solo 401ks. These have been around for decades. They're IRS-approved plans. They're just not talked about a whole lot because of the money. It just comes down to the dollars and cents when you simplify it.
If I guess I'm thinking about a number of questions, but so let's say I take that $50,000 and I go invest in doing a flip, but something goes sideways on that flip and I'm not able to pay that money back in that 5-year window. I'm doing a loan from the fund. What, at that point, do penalties get applied?
Yeah. So one, we always tell people it's a good idea to make monthly payments. So, maybe the monthly payment on that solo 401k loan is $400 a month, right? You don't have to make monthly payments, but you do have to make quarterly payments in the eyes of the IRS to avoid having that loan go into default. Even though you owe yourself the money, the loan is to yourself. Technically, you can still be in default. Basically, let's just say you took out 50 and you paid back 25, and that 25,000 that you still owe yourself, you default, then you're going to have to claim that money as income. And you're going to have to pay taxes and penalties if you're under the age of 59 and a half.
Yeah. Okay. So just to be clear about all that for anybody that's listening to this, there are some considerations to be knowledgeable of and sensitive to as you work through this thing. But I guess in the case of the lady with the school, she just set up a payment plan and put everything back in as things developed, right?
Yeah, she just became her own bank. She just paid back the principal plus the interest and was able to fund her own business that way.
Now, to what extent does your firm work to administer these funds? Is there a requirement to have a third-party administrator working it?
Yeah, so basically we just provide the customer service, the education. We're not financial advisors. We don't sell investments. We're not the custodian. We don't hold the funds. And that's by design. We like the freedom of being able to just purely educate people, give them the information that essentially is all Googleable. I mean, this is all public information. It's just most of our customers don't want to spend 10 hours on YouTube trying to figure this whole thing out on their own.
Yeah.
And you literally can Google self-directed IRA custodian or self-directed 401k custodian. And it would pull up a bunch of custodians that have the licenses to hold your funds and administer the kind of investments that we're talking about here, alternative investments. What we have found over the years that a lot of these self-directed custodians are really passive. What I mean by that is they'll charge you a couple $100 a year to hold your money, but then it's up to you to figure out how to do the paperwork. It's up to you to figure out solo 401k versus self-directed IRA. It's up to you to cross the T's and dot the I's. And a self-directed retirement account, I'm not here to say it's the one-all be-all solution and it's the best thing since sliced bread. There's certainly some cons that come to it. There's more paperwork involved. There's more ownership on your end, right? You're the captain of your own ship. You can decide where this money goes. So because of especially the paperwork side of things and customer service, a lot of customers, they don't want to deal with the burden of the paperwork. And I don't blame them. Like, I hate when I bought my house, how big of a pain in the neck that was dealing with paperwork and notaries and all that stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's just like your worst nightmare. So we try to take that same approach as far as taking the burden off of our customer shoulders and just trying to make the customer experience white glove, super seamless, so they can focus on their careers, their lives, and we can be in the background making life easier for them.
What do you think is the big so what and all that? Just in entertaining the idea of doing one of these programs to get access to the funds. What do you typically tell people is the bottom line?
The bottom line is what are you trying to accomplish, right? If you're somebody that has money in an IRA or 401k and it's with Vanguard, and you love their cheap fees and you love your investments in the stock market, why would you want to move your money to a self-directed plan? Where does that make sense? Like, how does that help you accomplish your financial goals? Right? That's the main thing. Everyone has a different financial plan. I don't believe there's a one size shoe fits all, right? So it's a matter of what does point A look like? What are you trying to accomplish? And maybe the same person that I just made up that I'm describing takes a stance of, I like the stock market. It's been good to me, but I'm not a big fan of the stock market right now. I don't have exposure to some other things that I'd like to be able to have exposure to. I know I can't call Vanguard and use my retirement account to invest in my business or invest into real estate. That's why I need to move some of my money into a self-directed account so I can do ABC, right? So we're like people's quarterback, right? Whatever play call they want to run, we want to help facilitate that play to make it nice and seamless.
That's nice. That's great. Daniel, if people do want to get a hold of you and learn more about this, what's the best way to do that?
Best way would be to go to danielblue.me. That's my website. That's danielblue.me. On my website, you can find a bunch of different information, free information. I've got a lot of content, a lot of articles there that go over the solo 401k and the self-directed space. I also have a podcast called How Winners Win. The goal there is to help people win in their financial life, their business life, personal life. Got a lot of fun doing that. So you can catch episodes there. And then I've got a book. It's called Blueprint to Your Best Retirement. So if you like Audible or hardcover or Kindle, you can pick one of those up. Basically, it goes more into detail what you and I have been talking about, Doug, in terms of helping people access their retirement account penalty and tax-free, how to make money tax-free. And the basis behind that book is I wanted to write a book that was easy to understand, wasn't going to put you to sleep, You can read it in a relatively short period of time, take some action, and see some kind of results. So that was the mission there. So you can pick up the book on the website. And then if you have an IRA or a 401k from an old job, and I've got your wheels spinning, you're thinking, well, what if I can do this? Or maybe I can do that. And the idea of accessing this money penalty and tax-free intrigues you. There's some information on my website that can get you headed in the right direction.
That's great. That's great. And folks, if you didn't catch all that on the first pass through, we're going to have all that information in the show notes. So feel free to jump over there and take a look and get everything written out. Daniel, this has been great information, and thanks for jumping in and sharing all that with us. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure being on your show. Appreciate you having me on your stage.
Yeah, you bet. And one more reminder to everybody, if you're listening this on your favorite audio channel, don't forget we've got a video version of it over on YouTube. Same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. You can hop over there, subscribe to YouTube, and get the updates on all new episodes we've got coming out. So as we said at the start, a lot of what this show is about is to try to make everything simple for you, find some good common sense answers that can mean something to you and help solve concerns and problems. So if you're sitting on a pile of cash in a 401 plan or IRA of some kind, check out Daniel's solutions and see if there's new opportunities on what you can do with that. Either start that business that you've always dreamed of, or grow the business you've already got. Just a number of different great opportunities to work with. So again, Daniel, thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure. And any final thoughts for anybody?
Shoot, let's hope that we have a decent or better second half of the year. It's been a wild ride first part of the year.
Amen.
Stock market, inflation. It's hard to pick winners right now. Everything's losing. So, I think that's why it's a good idea to keep investing in yourself. The investment you make in yourself is way better than any crypto, real estate, stocks. So investing in yourself is always a good move.
Amen. Amen. I think those are great words of wisdom that we'll let that be our closing argument here. So thanks again, everybody, for listening in. We look forward to seeing you again on another episode soon. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.